Hey, White Odion. I'm so sorry about what happened to your sister. You know, we gave her all this cool new support, and unfortunately, we had to ban it all. It was too good. But don't worry, I know your stuff is coming up soon, so we've got it for you right here. Good afternoon, jank enthusiasts. I'm MBT, and this is 10-minute testing. Sometimes, before you make a video, you have to sit with it for a while and imagine your audience. Well, this video has an audience of one, and I sure hope he's magenta-ing his pants right now. Presenting Odion.
Play that Egyptian god card now, so that I may rule as Pharaoh!
So here's the list. As always, I'll give you a background about the archetype, a little bit of a discussion about what I hope the deck can do, and of course, the card by card. But first, this video is sponsored by Yu-Gi-Oh! Pro Deck. Yu-Gi-Oh! Pro Deck is a one-stop shop for all things Yu-Gi-Oh! They're responsible for the pack opener that makes series-like progression possible. They've got strategy articles for those looking to flesh out their fundamentals. They're the most complete repository of deck lists and results from regionals and YCSs online. And they've also got cube and draft infrastructure that's finally seeing use now that Yu-Gi-Oh! Players have come to the light of Limited. There's a good chance that any Yu-Gi-Oh! Content you see on YouTube has Yu-Gi-Oh! Pro Deck's many tendrils somewhere within its DNA. So why not go to the source and improve your game, draft with friends, or just see what 11-year-olds are playing in their Blue Eyes decks this month? Head on over to YGOPRODECK.com. Now back to the video. So with that, let's ogle Odion. The non-archetypal series of retrains of cards used by Odion in the Duel Monsters anime was announced as debuting in Maze of Memories a few months back, and if Ishizu's retrains are anything to go by, even a card as unplayable as a Guido can become ban-worthy under the right circumstances. As reveals trickled out, however, it became clear almost immediately that Mama tier this was not. But it also became clear that this wasn't awful. These cards are hard to place. They enable a style of gameplay that's a little different than what we've become accustomed to. Finding starters is a cinch, giving them an unbelievable grind game, but finding extenders is near impossible, making it tough to play through interaction. So, where to put it? Well, we're playing Odion's cards alongside a pretty expansive and flexible Fiendsmith package. Like any Fiendsmith package, it can make rank 6s or Desiree, but we're aiming to capitalize instead on a bunch of small synergies. Aerial Eater can send Anubis, then return it to hand by going through the Unchained line. The 4-star Lacrima can be half of a Gallant Granite to make use of synergies with Lord of the Heavenly Prison. You can even use the Sharvara as half of a rank 6, because when it sets Prison, Temple will guarantee it's already online. I do want to say I don't think this build is correct. Right now it's designed to be as flexible as possible to show off the wealth of options available to Odion. As it becomes clear what you need to be building against, a lot of these engine pieces can vanish. But for now, let's get into the card by card. First up, we've got 3 copies of the Man with the Mark. If this card is normally special summoned, you can take a Temple of the Kings or a spell trap that mentions it from your deck and either add it to your hand or send it to the graveyard. This is a once per turn, and while you control Temple of the Kings, this card and Apophis monsters you control cannot be destroyed by battle or card effects, as well as Temple of the Kings, which has the same protection. Next up, we've got Anubis. This card's very frustrating. It has to be special summoned from your hand or graveyard while you have 3 or more cards in your graveyard with different names that are Temple of the Kings or traps by placing 2 of them on the bottom of the deck in any order. The important part of this card is this sentence. You can send this card from your hand to the graveyard to add a Man with the Mark from your deck to your hand. And if a spell trap you control is destroyed by a card effect, you can target a card your opponent controls and destroy it. Now, unfortunately, it only gets Man with the Mark. This is good. We want to have a lot of ways to our playmaker, but it means that you're going to open some hands that have 2 Anubis and 1 man, and you're going to really hate yourself. We have 1 extender. Sort of. It's Merciless Scorpion of Circuit. This can't be normal summoned or set and has to be special summoned by banishing a level 10 or higher monster from your hand or deck while you control Temple of the Kings. Now, they want you to play Wara with this card, but thankfully we have this other level 10 monster that is just about as good as the Winged Dragon himself. Anyway, this card can only be summoned once per turn, and then during your main phase you can add a Temple of the Kings or a spell that mentions it from your deck to your hand, and then at the start of the damage step, if this card battles an opponent's monster, you can destroy that monster, and this card gains attack equal to half the destroyed monster's original attack. So, this extends, but only if you've already got Temple, which is frustrating, but also will come up. We've got 3 copies of Fiendsmith Engraver, 1 copy of Lacrima, 1 copy of a searchable Lord of the Heavenly Prison, which has a ton of synergies in this deck. The ability to set individual cards on reveal is super important, and the card you will be setting almost always is going to be this Destructive Daruma Karmakin. Can be switched out as the format demands. We've got a Luri and an Unchained Soul of Sharvara. I don't know if the Unchained stuff is absolutely necessary in this deck. Like I said, it enables you to get to Anubis the Last Judge by going through the normal Unchained line and then using the effects of Rage and Yama in order to cycle it back, and the Yama to put it back in the hand. Unfortunately, This deck bricks in such a way that it is usually not lacking for a man with the mark. You're unable to find your other stuff, not the boy. 3 copies of Treasures of the Kings. This card can set an Apophis trap from your deck, and its name becomes Temple of the Kings while in the field zone. Then once per turn, if you have 2 or more set cards on your field or a trap in your graveyard, you can add a monster that mentions Temple from your deck to your hand. We're on a terraforming for that. A normal Temple of the Kings, which importantly allows you to activate a trap card the turn it was set. 1 copy of Tract, and then the traps. We've got 1 copy of Apophis the Serpent. This card can be special summoned as a normal monster that has an effect. Then you can set an Apophis trap from your deck, except itself. It can be activated this turn, and if this card is sent to the graveyard, you can add an embodiment from your deck to your hand. We are not playing that card. We are playing 2 copies of Apophis the Swamp Deity. Pretty scary for those of you who have played NR Festival against the one, the only true Draco. Or actually, this is an SR in Master Duel? Ugh. Anyway, during the main phase, you can special summon this card as a normal, then negate the effects of face-up cards your opponent controls up to the number of other continuous traps you control until the end of this turn. This is a really powerful card and a sick payoff to the Apophis line. We've got a Fiendsmith in Paradise, a DDKC, and an Abominable Chamber of the Unchained. After that, we've got 3 copies of Mulcharmy Fulos, 3 copies of Ash Blossom Joy Spring, 3 Nibiru, 2 Effect Veiler, and 3 Infip in the extra. We've got Requiem, we've got Moon, we've got Sequence, we've got Little Knight, we've got Rage and Yama. We've got a Gallant Granite, which can search a rock monster, usually the Lord of the Heavenly Prison, from a base of 2 level 4s, a Lars and a Caesar. This deck makes Lars very easily, and often it's game determinative. That said, Caesar is still pretty strong as well. We play a Typhon, and then a bunch of fusions we could theoretically summon off the sequence. Of course, we've got the Desiree, but we've also got Necroquip, which can be converted into if you need an extra body, and Aerial Eater, which I usually go into because it helps you extend through the plays your deck is already adept at getting to. Finally, we have this fusion monster, which is critical to your end board. 6-star monster called Divine Serpent Apophis that can be fusion summoned or special summoned by attributing 2 Apophis monsters. You may feel a little queasy at the thought of sacking your entire board to make this card, but don't worry. You can also target 3 Apophis traps with different names in your graveyard and set them, so you just get to cash them back in immediately. It also means that if you activate a trap card, you can also target a card your opponent controls and destroy it. So it converts these into really meaningful interaction, though cards like Apophis already pull pretty heavy weight on their own. In the side, we've got Druisworm, Magnamut, Lancias, we've got Ultimate Slayers, Triple Tactics, Thrusts, a Barrier, and Triple Solemn Strike. So with that, let's hop in the games. Our first match is up against Blue Eyes Primite, and if you're not excited to play Blue Eyes versus Odion, stay away from locals for the next couple of months. Real quick, I want to apologize for these low-quality card scans. We don't have officials, so enjoy the thumb in the Anubis. We're going to go for an Engraver here into a Tract. Tract is going to grab Lurie, we'll pitch the Lurie, we'll summon the Lurie to our side of the field, and then make a copy of the Requiem. We'll activate Requiem into an Ash Blossom. No big deal, because now we have the Engraver in rotation anyway. Time to go for the other half of the deck. We'll go Anubis into Man with the Mark. Man with the Mark is going to grab a Temple of the Kings. Then we'll add Temple of the Kings Taylor's version to our field spell zone, getting Treasures live and activating its effect in order to go ahead and get ourselves a copy of Merciless Scorpion. That'll be summoned by banishing a Nibiru, and we will grab another Temple before going for the graveyard effect of Engraver, summoning it to our side of the field, and let's just take a little Nibiru detour. We're going to begin with a copy of Sequence. Sequence is going to grab us a copy of Aerial Eater. That will allow us to send from deck to graveyard another Engraver as we go to Yama. Yama is going to grab Sharvara. We will link off for a Rage, Sharvara target Rage. This allows us to get the Sharvara on our field and then cycle the Yama and the Rage, getting back to our hand a copy of Anubis for next turn and the Aerial Eater from the graveyard, making a Caesar, and now let's do the Apophis stuff. We'll go Temple of the Kings into Apophis the Serpent, set a copy of Apophis the Swamp Deity, of course, instantly activatable, summon that, and then go for the Link fusion of Divine Serpent Apophis, resetting the entire board and passing back to our opponent. So this is the pretty normal turn 1 setup through one piece of interaction. This is pretty powerful, right? They do rip the Imperm, so we do have to play Yu-Gi-Oh! Today. They're going to begin with the Maiden effect, getting True Light, followed by Sage into a copy of Spirit. Spirit here is going to grab a copy of Mausoleum. I love ashing Spirit, but I just feel like I always get punished by them drawing the one of. They'll go for Spirit with Eyes of Blue here. We can negate that with DDD Wave High King Caesar. Of course, DDD Wave High King Caesar is negated, but the detach allows us to set an Abominable Chamber, which is alive immediately thanks to the Temple of the Kings. We'll go for that now and bait out a Drill Beam from our opponent, but we are far from done because we can use Apophis in order to pop that True Light. They'll go True Light effect. We will go Apophis the Serpent and Swamp Deity, so we can summon the Swamp Deity, negate the True Light, set, and then at point of resolution, we will pop that sucker. That triggers the graveyard effect of the True Light and eats the board into a Lordly Load. Thank goodness we saved the Ash Blossom Blossom because this means our opponent's going to be left on hot nothing. They're going to go ahead and activate the effect of the Mausoleum of White, getting them another normal summon, which they will convert into a Typhon. They'll use the Typhon effect, and I guess this is probably worth negating. We'll go Swamp Deity to negate the entire field, and they will pass turn. Should just be a hop, skip, and a jump to lethal here. We're going to go for another copy of Apophis, which of course can set everything once more. After that, we're just going to go ahead and fire off the Apophis to Swamp Deity and get that sucker off the field thanks to our first Apophis. We'll go to battle, and 2 + 2 + 28 + 28 is lethal. Our second match is up against Malice. Yeah, that's right. Blue Eyes Malice Ryziel. You thought this deck was bad, huh? Our hand is great, and we're going first. The Fuelos is a little frustrating, but hardly the end of the world. Importantly, our opponent's hand has two pieces of non-engine here. They've got the Baldrake and the Book of Eclipse, which means they can't contest the Fiendsmith's Requiem. That means I'm going to get to show you the rank 4 part of the deck. So let's begin with a copy of Tract. Send a copy of Lured to the graveyard, of course. I can't activate the Baldrake while I have nothing on my side of the field, so we will go for the Requiem into a copy of Lacrima. We'll activate the Lacrima in order to send to Paradise, and at this point, our opponent is going to activate the effect of the Baldrake to cut us off of Necroquip. We're going to go for the Man with the Mark. That's going to grab from deck to hand a copy of Temple of the King's Taylor's version. We'll go for Treasures into Apophis into Gallant Granite. Gallant Granite here is going to grab from deck to hand a copy of Lord of the Heavenly Prison. Then we will go ahead and get our Extender. We'll banish a Nibiru from deck to summon it, then activate Mystical Scorpion in order to get Temple of the Kings. From here, we can link off to an SP to banish the Baldrake, and now it's time to activate Apophis. Now that we've activated Apophis, we can set an Apophis. Now that we flip Apophis, we can summon that Apophis, and now that we have two Apophis, we can fusion summon an Apophis. You have no idea how many times that has screwed up this take. We're going to set to Apophis and then go for a copy of Lord of the Heavenly Prison, passing it back to our opponent. They'll draw for turn, and first comes the Apophis the Serpent. That's going to set a copy of Apophis the Swamp Deity and trigger the effect of the Lord of the Heavenly Prison to set a DDKC, which is online thanks to Temple of the Kings. From here, our opponent is going to go for a Gold Sarcophagus. We'll activate Apophis the Swamp Deity. They will Book of Eclipse, but unfortunately that card can be Ash Blossom, so we are going to go ahead and negate it. We'll negate the Gold Sarcophagus. They'll go for Dormouse. They'll activate the effect of the Dormouse for a copy of White Rabbit. They'll summon the White Rabbit to their side of the field, and from this position, they can trigger the effect of the White Rabbit into our Fiendsmith in Paradise, into our Apophis the Swamp Deity, into their MTP-07 for a Chessy Cat. We'll summon out the Apophis the Swamp Deity, negate the board, send a copy of Desiree to the graveyard, then use the effect of the Desiree, shuffling back the Lurie in order to send their last remaining monster and eat their back row thanks to Divine Serpent. Now they can chain the TB11 here to get to Chessy Cat, but at point of resolution, when they activate Dormouse, they are going to fall victim to the DDKC. That's going to set everything on the field, including my traps, back to the back row. Isn't that funny? We draw one of the worst draws in our deck, but we're so far ahead, I doubt it matters at this point. Let's just summon everything here, the Swamp Deity and the Serpent. That's going to trigger the Apophis, popping this copy of Chessy Cat. We'll make another Apophis, activate its effect in order to set 2 cards, and then from this position, we can go for another Apophis, summoning it to our side of the field and popping the last remaining monster. We'll go to the battle phase. Thankfully, we've played under Nibiru into 2, into 28, 28, and 3. All right. So it's time for game 3, and you know what that means, a best of 3 versus meta. Our opponent's playing Ryziel, and they're playing straight up Ryziel, rank 4 Ryziel. Thanks to 7th Tachyon, they're reveling in their new riches and eschewing the Fiendsmith. You can even see the double or nothing in grip. We're going first. We're going to begin with a copy of the Man with the Mark. They are going to impermit, and ooh, this is one of those situations I talked to you all about where a lack of extenders is really hurting us. Inversely, all of Ryziel is extenders, so they're going to go X into Sword. That's going to grab them a copy of Ice. They'll overlay for Duo Drive. That's a pretty tasty Ash Blossom, and thankfully it does resolve, but unfortunately Ice coming down next is probably the end of the game. They're going to go Ice in a Node. We can Nibiru here, which is something at least, but of course they have not only follow-up, but the ability to shuffle our last remaining card back into the deck. We'll draw for turn. It's got to be crazy, and that is probably not enough. Let's set this sucker to defense position. They will draw for turn. It's 7th Ascension. They'll go for 7th Ascension, which allows them to grab a Tachyon, and this is all she wrote. 7th Tachyon, revealing a light, is going to grab from deck to hand a copy of X. They'll put back the Garnet that they have ripped in their opener into an X Ryziel, into an Ice Ryziel, into a Sword Ryziel, into an Ice Ryziel. From here we can DDKC, maybe buys us another turn. Looks like. Yeah, but Sharvara is not it. We will Sharvara targeting the Apophis, the Swamp Deity. We'll flip up the Nibiru. They will Book of Moon the Nibiru, and of course we can't get the Sharvara off our side of the field, so we'll scoop. Kind of a strange game 1. I feel like we both were just sitting on nuclear bombs, daring the other person to violate the principle of mutually assured destruction. We're going first in game 2, and our opponent has drawn 2 Charmies and an Imperm. Okay, they're going to begin with a copy of Perulia. This is one of the hands that can play around it, though. We're going to go for the Treasures of the Kings. We've set a copy of Apophis the Serpent. We've got the Fiendsmith Tract. We're going to go from Anubis into Man with the Mark. We'll activate Fiendsmith's Tract. That's going to grab us a copy of Lurie. Lurie pitches to Graveyard and summons from there, at which point we'll walk into the Fuelos. Okay, I think probably what we want to do here is just thrust just into a dimensional barrier and hope for the best. No need to keep playing and giving them draws. 2 bonfires is frustrating for our opponent, but not the end of the world, of course. We will go for the Apophis the Serpent. That's going to grab us a Swamp Deity. They'll go for the Extrazial, trigger the effect of the Mirror Logic Aggregator to negate the effect of our field spell, and then grab a sword. They'll special the sword, activate the sword effect. This is prime time to fire off the dimensional barrier, but also I'm going to fire off the Apophis here to try and cut them off of follow-up. We don't know about the bonfire, of course, but from this position, it looks like this is all they've got. They're going to set a card and pass. This is great because we get to threaten that back row immediately by going into a Divine Serpent Apophis. We'll activate the effect that forces an imperm. That is correct. And now we can just chill. Because we have so many trap cards in the graveyard, we can shuffle 3 of those bad boys back in order to grab back Anubis the Last Judge into another Treasure of the Kings to set the Apophis we just shuffled. We'll go for Temple of the Kings and normal summon a copy of Lacrima. That's going to add an engraver to the graveyard. Then we'll go Apophis the Serpent to summon it to our side of the field, setting an Apophis the Swamp Deity. Temple of the Kings here is going to grab us a copy of Merciless Scorpion. Let's go for an Apophis that isn't going to be negated. Set 2 and then activate the effect of our Fiendsmith Requiem off the Link summon. Let's go Engraver, and from this position we can Requiem target Engraver, and our opponent will concede. So it's time for that all-important Game 3, and what is this? Don't you use my own Gravekeepers against me? You don't understand how devoted I've been to the Order! Alright, down comes Gravekeeper's Inscription, followed by Extrazial. They're going to go for Sword here and grab a copy of Ice. This is probably worth a Fool loss. Afterwards, we're going to fire off a Pot of Desires, draw 2 cards, and then decide 1 draw is enough. Detonator here is going to attach a Detonator from the graveyard into a Triple Tactics Talents. Oh, eating the best card in our hand. They're going to set 2 cards and pass. We'll draw for turn. We're going to begin with a copy of Anubis. Anubis is going to grab the Man with the Mark. We'll normal summon the Man with the Mark, and yeah, Man with the Mark into Solemn Strike is full combo. Okay, well, this was a fun experience. They're going to begin with a copy of Ice Raziel. We will ash that. They elect not to Solemn Strike it, and I'm just like, can you please pretend to be afraid, please? Ugh, all right, let's scoop it up. So we're back with the deck, and we probably could have played better, but losing to Raziel is pretty common during this format, even for good strategies. Let's do the pros and cons. First, the pros. 1. The Odion engine gives you access to a variety of powerful pieces. A searchable Temple of the Kings allows synergy with Heavenly Prison, and the engine itself puts out 1/2 chainable field omnis that print bodies. Man with the Mark gives a huge amount of protection to the deck, meaning it's hard to remove the pieces while they're on the field. Divine Serpent is a soft once per turn, meaning you can recycle the traps very efficiently while printing extra bodies with interruption, which leads to a fairly competent, compact, and unique deck in terms of the current meta with regards to interruption. 2. The Fiendsmith half of the deck has surprisingly more synergies than first glance. We talked about this a little in build, but you can access the Odion engine by using Aerial Eater to send Anubis, then recovering it with the Unchained Soul of Rage. You can use Lacrima to send Paradise to turn on the Odion field spell. Since the Fiendsmith cards are 6s and 4s, you have access to 6s and 4s. Due to Moon, you can even use a mana and a circuit to just do Fiendsmith combo while having the Serpent of Apophis set up for an Omni alongside the Fiendsmith. And 3, the Odion engine has a ridiculous amount of grind. It searches every turn with the field spell, the Apophis Fusion resets the traps, Anubis is a non-once-per-turn summon that just needs to shuffle back 2 traps if you have Temple of the Kings mentioning cards in the graveyard. You can swarm and grind pretty well turn 3 and beyond. And the cons. 1. The Odion engine doesn't really have a good extender to help you resolve your setup. If you can't get to the field spell, you can't access the Apophis traps. If you normal summon Man and he gets interrupted and you open Anubis and Circuit, well, they don't do anything. Circuit is this weird low-value extender because it requires your setup to be complete to be summoned. Anubis searches your normal summon and nothing else. That's clunky. If you see Anubis and Man in your hand, you're going to be overloaded. 2, the continuous traps take up a ton of physical space on the board. This is kind of hard to explain, but you need 2 or 3 open board slots or your traps can't do anything. So if you end on too much like Apophis and Caesar and Rage, you kind of have to wait till Rage resolves and goes to the EMZ to be able to get both trap negates. And 3, that means 4 slots of your back row are already accounted for. The deck will struggle to play in a pure trap form because it will get overloaded with back row and will occasionally miss out on auto-win trap cards like Dimensional Barrier, which otherwise would be fantastic in this trap-centered strategy. That said, overall, Odion looks pretty promising. It's a stellar engine with a variety of ways to play it. It's no Raziel, for sure, but it's a solid option if you like the pace of play. So that's that. Thanks so much for watching. These videos are made possible by, and occasionally suggested by, my patrons, some of whom have paid a ton of money to be mentioned at the end of the video. A huge heartfelt thank you to Elena Tincher, Alex Perea, Allison Elliott, Ally, Anthony S. Sierri, APK, Early Tier 0, Brett Henry, Cool Name, Damon O'Neill, Dark Rebel XYZ, Derpin Dragon, DJ Elefante, DK Gondo, NB Adams, FPS Lord Derp, Garrett Ran, Hergalicious, Juan Cruz Avilazati, Night Mary, Legal Rights, Luis Hernandez, Lullaby of Souls, Master of Faster, Matthew M. Derezzo, MBT Play Madolce, Mike Carlotti, N54 Lionheart, Nacho Gonzalez, Nebula Yu-Gi-Oh!, Pombo, Project Mercury, Rohan Doge, Rose Lapine, Serpentax, Shelby Piet, Sly Ninja 43, Soul CLG, Troy Says By Erasure is Gay, Who's Nick, Wonder Waffle, and Yuki Kazami. Couldn't have done it without you. Hey, White Odion.
Okay, listen.